Thank you so much, Gabby. Great job. And Tracy, I will put my shirt back on, but I'm sweating in here at the moment, so I'll put my red back on later. All I had is the thermal red shirt. Cool. Well, I'm excited for the session today. We're going to do our first ROS session of the year. And just to give you a little bit of a roadmap of what we're going to do, we're going to kind of work our way through ROS throughout the year, working through each kind of component methodically. But before we did that, for those of you that are new, or maybe this is your first time joining the Monday team meetings with Burgo, I wanted to talk a little bit about my story. So my story defines the reason why I'm passionate about ROS and why we've created this and why we're deploying this throughout the organization. And so it's very personal. I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable with you all now. So thank you in advance for listening to a little bit of my backstory and kind of how I got here to Burgo and doing what I'm doing now. So, for a long time, some of you may have heard this analogy. My life kind of felt like the game Chutes and Ladders. I had some ladder moments where I, was kind of climbing up, having a good outcome, and some chutes moments where I was flying down, taking a big step backwards. And so I grew up in very humble beginnings. My family had very little financial means. My parents were actually divorced when I was 3. So kind of between having divorced parents and having no real financial stability, I was bouncing around and led me into a bit of a downward spiral of rebellion, which ultimately culminated in me actually getting expelled from high school. So I got kicked out of high school, went to an alternative school my senior year. And in fact, it was fun kind of talking to seniors in high school this past week who were in the exact shoes that I was in when I was in an alternative school, having made a really bad decision. I was trying to help them not make the bad decisions that I had made and help them kind of realize their own unique importance and how they could avoid some of the mistakes that I made. Well, in sort of a miracle moment, I got accepted to a school called the University of Pittsburgh. Had never even visited the city of Pittsburgh, never stepped foot in the city of Pittsburgh. And I get accepted to this college, and I couldn't believe I was going to go to college after getting expelled from high school. And so freshman orientation, the first time I ever stepped foot in the city of Pittsburgh, I show up, and I really decide to pour myself into productive things. So where I was really deploying all my energy into counterproductive things for the first, 18 years of my life. Finally started to read a lot of books. I read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It really helped me understand the mentality of, I realized I sort of grew up in this poor dad mindset. And in the rich dad mindset in this book, they talk about doing things like investing and investing in real estate. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. That sounds so cool. I graduated from college, actually graduated, towards the top of my class because I was working 2-3 jobs at a time and paying my own way through school, but really pouring myself into school as well. So I was, I would stay up all night working on papers after having worked two shifts at a job. I'd stay up and write papers. And so I got accepted I got offered a job at a local bank called PNC Bank. Again, couldn't believe I got offered a job. It was kind of crazy. And the year I graduated from college, I bought a duplex. Now, this is crazy because you can't do this today, but the banks were doing all kinds of crazy stuff back then. So I have no credit. I have no cash. In fact, I owed a whole lot of money in student loans. And I buy a duplex and I walk away from closing with a check for $20,000. I mean, what bank would loan me, the guy that got expelled from high school, enough money to buy a duplex and give me $20,000 for closing? So again, this is why the crash of 08 and 09 happened. This was prior to that. Banks were doing crazy things. So I buy a duplex, check for 20 grand. I take that 20 grand and I go invest in 3-unit. I refinance that, invest in a 6-unit. Kind of the rest is history. But I'm finally starting to do well. I'm assembling this portfolio. But that rebellious teenager wasn't quite ready to retire just yet. So I still was living a little bit of a reckless lifestyle, which actually ended up culminating in me getting locked up in Manhattan, New York, facing a felony charge. Crazy. Now, I got off that charge, ended up being found not guilty. But it was this transitional moment in my life where I was like, oh my gosh, I have to stop living for myself and start living for others. I have to put away this rebellious childhood nature of mine and start to really focus on what do I want out of my life. If I could define my childhood in one word, I would use the word drifting or maybe lost. I was just flowing around, going whichever way the water would take me. And so I decided that I wanted to design my life instead of drifting. And so this design concept is the entire theory behind the Rhino operating system, or ROS. It's, hey, instead of just drifting through life like I did for most of my life, let's design our lives. Let's figure out, hey, what are my own unique, deepest desires? What do I actually want? And chase after those. And that's what I've done for the past decade. Now, just because you design your life doesn't mean you're not going to have setbacks. In fact, many of you know this, but this year actually marks the 10-year anniversary since I was diagnosed with cancer. So 1 year into being married with my bride, Shannon, find out that I'm diagnosed with cancer. I might not survive. And then I get surgery. And 3 months after that surgery, I found out that the cancer had spread and I need to go through chemotherapy. Lost all my hair, 9 weeks of really intensive chemo. So the reality is that bad things can still happen to all of us, but having a system, a way of organizing our energy is the goal. And so let's talk about the Rhino operating system. Well, many of you know, we as an organization run on the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, and it has 6 components. Now, an operating system is just a way of organizing human energy. So the entrepreneurial operating system helps us organize organizational energy. The Rhino operating system, ROS, is a way of organizing human energy in your life. So the way you can think of it is entrepreneurial operating system is for the business, Rhino operating system is for your life. And there are 5 components to the Rhino operating system. I'm going to just briefly walk you through those 5 components. So the first component is the who component. It all starts with understanding who you are. For a long time, as you may understand from hearing my story, I had no idea who I was. In fact, I was trying to be somebody that I really wasn't. And so this is all about you understanding your own unique DNA, your own blueprint as a person, never before been created, never again going to be created. Who are you? Start with who. Don't start with why, start with who. You got to understand yourself before you can really understand what you're called to do, what your purpose is in this life. And that, of course, is the why component. So after you understand your one-of-a-kind, unique DNA, then you can really dive into, hey, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What do I want to accomplish in my life? What's my 10-year goal, my 3-year picture? What am I really trying to accomplish here? Once you understand your why, what's undergirding, your purpose, then you can dig into your what. So your what is really the combination of what should I be doing? What am I passionate about doing? What am I proficient in doing? What am I prepared to be doing? That's the what component. It's really what should I be doing with my life? And then once you've understood your who, your why, and your what, it's about setting the how. So how will I actually get there? The how is all about setting goals and knocking them down. It's about continuing to make forward progress towards that purpose, towards those long-term goals. And last but not least is the when component. When is all about having the optimal rhythms of both energy and accomplishing things and rest. So at least for me, for a very long time, I didn't know what rest was. I mean, I was just running and gunning and burning myself out. And so I realized that that doesn't work. And, again, cancer is one of those things that is a rude awakening where it's like, okay, I need to take this seriously. I need to take my own self-care seriously. I need to turn things around. And so all 5 of these components kind of come together to create the Rhino operating system. And that's what we believe is something we want to bring to and offer to this organization for you all to understand and to dig into as you go throughout your lives. So today's session is going to be in the who component. And in fact, the next couple of sessions are going to be the who component. What we're going to do is throughout the year, we're going to dive into all 5 components. And hopefully this is of service to you as you dig into and understand yourself and start to work through the 5 components in your own unique life. So let's talk a little bit about self-discovery. So today's session is going to be all on self-discovery. And I want to talk about the 3 key benefits that I believe happen when we spend time thinking about ourselves, thinking about self-discovery. So the first thing that I really believe is important as we think about self-discovery is unleashing our strengths. So you've heard me say this before, but we don't want to focus on our weaknesses. We want to focus on our strengths. So in order to really unleash those strengths, we need to understand those strengths. Understand, hey, what am I really good at? What am I bringing to this world that is unique about me? And once you understand those strengths, you can unleash them in the work you do and in your daily life. So that's the first component, or the first rationale, is really unleash your strengths. The second is this: uncover your blind spots. So I believe we all have blind spots. And when you dig into self-discovery, you can actually start to understand those blind spots. The people around us can help us see them and call them out in terms of things we might not be seeing ourselves, so that we can make sure that we are aware of them and make sure that we are managing those blind spots. So we all have blind spots. They are the things that are often beneath the surface and things that we need to have others help us to see in ourselves and to manage them well. And so the third key benefit to focusing on self-discovery is this: it's understanding our shadow sides. So here's the thing: for every positive attribute that we have, we often have an equal and opposite shadow side. Now, those shadow sides are things that might show up in a relationship with somebody that is important for us to understand and important for them to understand, because it's something that may impact how our relationship interacts with each other. And so when we shine light on those shadow sides, bring those shadow sides into the light, we can have conversations around them. We can make sure we're managing them in ways that are healthy in those relationships. We probably can't get rid of them, but we can at least understand them. So again, just a quick recap: 3 key benefits of focusing on self-discovery, understanding ourselves. First of all, it allows us to unleash our strengths, not focus on our weaknesses, really unleash our strengths. Uncover our blind spots. So seeing our blind spots from others, making sure that we can see them and recognize them in ways that are important. And third is understanding our shadow sides. So again, we all have these shadow sides, understanding them and bringing light to the shadow sides. So today, as you all know, I am a self-assessment junkie. So I love assessments. I love to understand myself. Today, we're going to actually talk about one that we really haven't talked about here at Burgo very much, and it is called the Enneagram. So the Enneagram is really cool. There's 9 types, and it basically categorizes everybody into one of these 9 types. So here's what I want you to do. If you've taken the Enneagram before, I want you to post your number in the chat. Now you can post the wing if you want, but what I'm really concerned about is your number. Shannon's a 3. Kim is an 8. Again, if you've taken the Enneagram, go ahead and post your number in the chat. It is a 4-wing 5. Gabby's a 7. If you haven't taken the Enneagram, I want you to look at these 9 labels and take a guess at what you think you might be. So here are the 9 labels. You'll see them listed here from 1 to 9. If you don't actually know what you are, go ahead and take a guess at what you think you might be. Catherine's a 1.
They're really hard to read. I don't know if that's my screen or not, but I can't actually read the words.
Yeah, can you make it bigger? I can't see the words.
All right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll read them to you. Number 1 is the strict perfectionist. Number 2 is the considerate helper. Number 3 is the competitive achiever. Number 4, the intense creative. Number 5, the quiet specialist. Number 6, the loyal skeptic. Number 7, the enthusiastic visionary. Number 8, the active controller. And number 9, the adaptive peacemaker. So take a guess, just based on those, what you think you might be. All right, Miami a 2, Tracy a 3, Nick a 3, Gail a 5, Gina 5. Elena's thinking a 2 or a 9, Emma 9, Brittany 9, Mel 6, Jill 5, Claudette 1, Carla 2, Andrew 2, Lindsay might be a 5 or a 6, Ethan 7. Gary's a big 2. Big considerate helper. Love it. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So you guys get the idea. Again, if you haven't taken that before, I highly recommend, there we go. Highly recommend checking it out. I think it can be a really helpful assessment. One of the things I like about the Enneagram is it breaks everybody into sort of these 3 different triads or 3 different groupings. So 3 of those numbers tend to operate more on their gut or their instincts. That's the 8, 9, and the 1. 3 of them tend to operate a little bit more on their heart or their feelings. That's the 2, 3, and the 4. And 3 of them tend to operate a little bit more in their head or their thinking. And that's the 5, 6, and 7. Again, as you'll sense here, one of the things I like about this assessment is it gets a little bit underneath the surface. So like the gut ones, the primary emotion is anger. The heart ones, the primary emotion is often shame. The head ones, the primary emotion is often fear. So as you can see, there's a lot of power in this assessment and understanding some of those deep-rooted kind of motivations. So this is my Enneagram. I'm a 7. If you guys read those, you're probably not surprised. The enthusiastic visionary is what they would call the 7. Busy, fun-loving, seeking variety, tackling challenges with optimism, bringing creativity, energy, and optimism, easily making friends, escaping into hyperactivity, and often impulse seeking or impulse pleasure seeking, spontaneous, versatile, distractible, scattered. That's me. If you didn't know already, that's Andrew Reichert. And so I love this assessment just in terms of understanding broadly how I'm wired. And so there's a tool that we use called the self-discovery tool to really dig into what does this actually mean for me. This tool has 4 quadrants. So there is the above the surface. In fact, if you look at this graphic in the background, it's an iceberg. There are things that are above the surface, so kind of the tip of the iceberg. These are things that you can see. So by observing me, there are probably some things that you can see that you're like, okay, yeah, I see that in Andrew. But there's also these below the surface items, and these are the bottom of that iceberg. Things that you might not see by observing me, but things that really impact my motivation and my way of operating. So I'm going to go through this tool briefly for myself. Then we're going to have some dialogue around it. So as I mentioned, so you can put the assessment in here. I'm a 7. Now, I don't want to get too detailed on Enneagram world because this isn't meant to be an Enneagram teaching session, but I'm technically a 7-wing 8. In fact, I'm pretty close to both a 7 and an 8. And your wing is just your next closest number. So what does that mean? Well, here are some of my strength attributes. These are the above the surface ones you can probably see just by observing me. I'm optimistic, flexible, future-oriented, adventurous. I think those all define me pretty well. Now, what are some shadow attributes? What are some shadow sides to those? I can become bored pretty easily. I can be self-indulgent at times, impulsive, and you might actually experience me as uncommitted or unfocused. In fact, oftentimes I have a little bit of what might even be perceived as ADD. I might be all over the place. In fact, if you've interacted with me on projects, you've probably experienced that in one way or another. Now, what are some of the below the surface things? These are some of the things that you might not know or experience just by looking at me. But on the strength side, I can be quick, have an agile mind. I'm a really fast learner. This is interesting. I treat people as equals. I tend to not judge on authority, like the position that you're in. I tend to just judge people on their merits. So everybody's kind of the same to me. I could meet the president of the United States or the high school seniors last week, and they're all about the same to me. Shake their hand, no big deal. I have strong connection to possibilities. So I'm always thinking about the possibilities, and I love a good challenge. So if you don't know that about me already, I'm motivated by challenge. It's my number one motivational tendency is I love a challenge. But what are some of the shadow sides of those for me? I can be prone to addictions. I might wear my body out, as I mentioned, in high school and college, pulling all-nighters, just beating myself up, wearing myself out. I need to be careful, make sure I'm doing the correct rhythms of rest. I can sometimes avoid feelings and pain. So sometimes I can actually brush off feelings and pain and just try to stay positive and ignore it, bottle it up. That's obviously can be very unhealthy. And I can have some people-pleasing tendencies. I can sometimes put a little bit too much emphasis on what other people think about me. Now that's my Enneagram and that's the tool. But here's where I really love the Enneagram is when you use it in pairs. So what you can do is you can look at a pair and you can pair people together and say, how do their Enneagrams interact with each other? So here's a pairing of me and my wife, Shannon, the competitive achiever. I'm going to ask Shannon to kind of talk through this with me a little bit. So Shannon, do you feel like you are a competitive achiever? Like, do you feel like the 3 defines you?
Absolutely. I'd like to say I'm not competitive at all, but I'm definitely very goals focused and in a shadow side kind of way, a little too competitive with fun games.
Okay. Yeah. Has that showed up for you sometimes where you're like, maybe I went a little bit too far there on the competition?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun, but I mean, Andrew and I often talk about how we either have to be on the same team or separate teams because of that competitive nature. And Andrew leading the challenge, like, it can just be a lot between the two of us when we're on opposite teams with lots of people.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So the 3-7 combo, you and me, can be a really powerful combo. In fact, you and I can show up as electrifying. We often are very comfortable with people, probably good at hosting people at our house, things like that. But we have to be careful because, as you said, we don't want to compete with each other because that can be a little bit of almost too much fire under one roof. Do you feel like that sort of defines our combo pair here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How about in terms of, so one of the interesting things about the 3 is you may tend to be bring a little bit more responsibility, whereas the 7 can be a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more risk-taking. Do you see that in our relationship at all?
Yeah, I was reading our comparison, and one point was that 3s bring a focus on goals and staying practical and grounded and observe healthy habits. And I think that really plays out between the two of us because Andrew is getting better at this, but historically he was very much a yes man to every new possible thing we could do. And as we grew our family and had Virgo and that continued to grow, it's kind of like we need to focus on what's most important. And there needs to be a lot of things that you say no to. So actually like kind of getting grounded and creating those healthy limits, I think it's been really helpful antidote to helping you succeed.
Love it. Thank you so much. And I love how you balance me out that way. Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. So the next pair I'm going to go through is me and Ed, my intergalactic amazing integrator. So Ed is a 4. A 4 would be called the intense creative, or also known as the individualist. Interestingly, as much as Shannon and I are similar, Ed and I are basically complete opposites. Surprise, surprise. Ed, do you feel like the 4 defines you or describes you well?
Yeah, I do. I do like there's some different versions of Enneagram. So this is intense creative. A lot of other places they call it like individualist. And I do think it captures a lot of me. So like I wrote that like there's a couple things that are key to individualists. So like basic fear, where they don't have an identity or personal significance. So basic desire is to find themselves and their significance, create an identity, a key motivation, wanting to express themselves and their individuality, and to maintain certain moods and feelings, to withdraw to protect their self-image, to take care of emotional needs before attending to anything else, and stuff like that. So that is, I think, whenever I say to people, often in a work context, that I'm a type 4, if they know about Enneagram, that's kind of surprising because it doesn't really come out a lot in like probably my workplace interactions. But getting to what you were saying before, a lot of Enneagram is kind of like what's underneath, not exactly always everything that you see on the surface.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you really got to know me and kind of what's underneath, what's driving me, you probably start to see that the type 4 actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And so in the relationship pair of you and me, this is really interesting. They kind of say, I'm actually going to read this. I love it. It's sort of a case of opposites attracting. 4 tends to be quiet, introverted, self-doubting, emotional, and pessimistic. And 7s tend to be outgoing, extroverted, self-confident, mental, and optimistic. I'm curious if you feel like that describes our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, every assessment we've taken kind of shows we're opposite in a lot of ways. And yeah, I resonate with these 5 different pairings and their opposites. One of the things I think about, or one of the things with the Enneagram, and I don't know that much about it, but it has different levels of kind of health and unhealth.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of dictates 9 levels. I think one of the things that helps with our relationship is I think we're both like relatively healthy expressions of our Enneagrams.
Yeah.
And that allows us to kind of interact and actually complement each other well. Whereas if we were both more like unhealthy expressions, probably wouldn't work that well.
Yeah.
We'd probably just be too opposite or too like focused on different things.
Oh, I love that. Super wise observation there. And interestingly, when I go into unhealthy territory, at least for myself, I can be an unhealthy 7. I can particularly be an unhealthy 8. You know, this is where like me sitting on the 7-8 fence is interesting, because I think that's where I become much more combative than collaborative. And that's a part of myself that I'm not proud of and try to avoid. So you're totally right. The healthy, unhealthy dynamic is a really important aspect of this assessment.
Yeah, likewise, like unhealthy 4, super emotional, withdrawn, probably combative in their own way, but more of an avoidant style versus a combative style.
Yep.
And yeah, I slip into that for sure. And when I do, like, yeah, I'm not very collaborative. And, it's hard to find. So.
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, appreciate your vulnerability and honesty there. And, the cool thing about just understanding this for each other is we can keep each other in check a little bit, which I think is, really, really healthy in our relationship. So thank you. Last but not least, I'm going to do a combo here with Gabby. So the reason I wanted to do this is because Gabby and I are actually the same exact number. So 7 and 7. So it doesn't have to be a combo of 2 different numbers. You can actually do a combo of the same number as well. Gabby, do you feel like you're a 7?
Yeah, I'm such a 7.
And what
I'm such a 7.
what ways does it show up for you?
Yeah, I think so. Like loving the heck out of everything is a 7. So someone brings me an idea and I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's do it. And then, like my full focus planner, like is just ridiculous. Like all the notes are written. So I want to do all the things that I want to do all right now. So everything excites me, and that makes like sometimes prioritization or scattered more of my thing. So.
Yeah. But you and I, we can throw a good party. I mean, like we know how to travel and have fun and throw a good party, right?
Yeah, sevens can be a little extra. We are definitely like influencers.
Yep.
But yeah, really enjoy fun. And then like I think, because we're driven a little bit by avoiding fear, right? We like to always like have fun or have new challenges or have new things that we're trying to chase. So
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. Appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you for those of you that posted your number in the chat. There was a question on learning more about Enneagram. So if you want to take the assessment or you want to learn more, we'll share these slides with you, but we actually have a place where you can go take the assessment. There's a really good book called The Road Back to You that talks about each of the numbers and digs into those healthy and unhealthy states that we had kind of talked about. So let's just do a quick recap of, kind of reasons for self-discovery, and then I'll send you all on your way. So just a reminder, why should we care about self-discovery? Why should we be focused on, understanding ourselves better? Unleash your strengths, really focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses. Uncover your blind spots. So understanding those blind spots that you might not be seeing day in and day out, but that are showing up in the way in which you interact, and really understanding your shadow sides. Again, for every positive attribute, there's a shadow side for us to understand. So where do we go from here? Well, first of all, I would suggest that you take the Enneagram if you haven't already. A couple of things I want to mention about the Enneagram. First of all, it's not a label. So you want to make sure you don't label people with that number. So for example, let's say I didn't do my rock. I can't just be like, oh, I'm a 7. I got distracted. No big deal. Or maybe I show up late to a meeting and everybody in the meeting is like, ha, 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 Andrew's a 7. No wonder he's late. It's really just about giving us common language to be able to have these kinds of conversations. So it's not a label. The self-reflection is the important piece. So we've got a tool for you to do this self-reflection. You can use this self-discovery tool, and Kim is going to actually post that tool in the chat as well. So there's a fillable PDF that you can use and complete this on your own. By the way, in terms of taking the Enneagram, each of you gets a $500 professional development credit every year. So you can take the Enneagram using that credit. You can buy the book, The Road Back to You. And honestly, I would highly recommend that you do those two things. If you haven't already taken the assessment and read the book, it's on Burgo. Go ahead and, get those two things and expense them. And we would love for you to just understand, this tool and use it in your personal and professional life. And third thing for you to consider doing is just do a relationship comparison. So I gave you a few examples of relationship comparisons here. Me and my spouse, me and somebody I work with a lot, me and somebody else that I kind of collaborate with. So maybe think about who are those relationships that would be helpful for you to dig into and understand a little bit. And you could also have them take the Enneagram if they haven't already. So that's it for today's ROS session. I hope that was helpful. We're out of time, but if there are any questions here at the end, I'd be happy to field them. We could probably go over a couple minutes. Any final questions before we wrap? You're welcome.
you have a bad joke, Andrew, when you're ready.
Let's do it. Take us home.